All right. So basically, in our last class, which was on Tuesday, I was supposed to round up, but I had power issues, so I could not proceed. But I said I'm going to round up today, and I'll take at max 1 hour of your time. But I'm not even sure it's going to take up to 1 hour because I don't have much to say anymore. I just wanted to make sure that I go through the basic things that you need to understand about React. So we worked on a quick revision of what we did. We worked on creating our component folder and pages folder, arranging our data structure. We created components, we created pages. I told you guys the different way of styling, inline styling, external styling, and external styling in this thing React. And I also mentioned the uses of each file, like our index.html, our public folder, our source folder, our package.json, our dots.ignore. I mentioned all these things. Then, lastly, before we round it up, I spoke about props, passing data from one component to the other. So, if I want to pass data from client.js to footer.js, I can do that using props. I want to pass it down to hero.js, I can do that using props. I want to pass it down to nav.js, I can do that using props basically. So let's proceed further now. So basically the second thing I want to go into now, or should I say the part I want to go into now from last week, is to talk about how you can add images to your React application basically. So the first thing I'm going to do now is in my public folder. This is my public folder, right? My public folder, I'm going to okay. My public folder, I'm going to create. Please increase your screen size. Okay, let me do that. Okay, so basically now, I hope you can see this now. All of you can. In my public folder, I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it images. That's the first thing I'll do if I'm trying to add an image to my React folder. So the first thing I do is create an image folder. Then if this is my image folder, I'm not going to add any image I want to. So let's say for example now I want to add let's see, this is an image here. I'll just copy this image. As I copy it, I'll come to my images folder and okay, I can actually even transfer or paste from there. Okay, let's take this image now. This is an image, right? Let me clean this out so we can do our terminal. Mhm. Okay. Alright, so basically now when I create my images folder, I'll just have to go to that folder in my documents. That should be bigger and the portfolio site. Then I'll click on my public. Then I'll select the images I created. So this image folder I created, just have to paste. So like I have an image now in my image folder, right? So all I have to do now is let's go to my hero because I want to display this image next to this. This is my hero page. So let's look for the component that contains this is my hero page. So that should be hero.js. Now this is my hero page. And all I want to do is now add the image. So what I can just do is first of all, for good HTML practice, I'm going to create h1 tag and I'll put back this is my hero page, right? Then this is too big. Let's make it smaller. Let me give it h4. Let me give it h4 tag. So below that, I'm going to add my image. Now in React, once you add an image tag, your alt component is necessary. Having your alt component is necessary, basically. So I have to put in my alt. Let's say hero image, right? Then I'm now going to add my source. Um, my source now to target this image now in my images. Let us understand that this hero.js is inside component, which is inside source, which is inside portfolio. So if I close all of this now, you can see the arrangement. So this hero.js now is inside component, which is this component, and this component is inside source, and this component is inside portfolio, right? So basically, I'm sorry about that, guys. So basically, I was explaining the path directly of our image. So our image is inside public folder, which is inside these images. This image is inside the public folder, and this is our image. I'm trying to target this image, this particular image, right? So all I just have to do is on this my hero page, basically, I'm just going to do slash images slash use the name, call it a system. So now if I come here and I refresh, you can see the image, right? That's basically so many people ask like the most questions that come about is if when I'm trying to import, let's look for let's say I go to my pages now and I go to home.js. You see when I'm importing now, I have to specify the path where that particular folder is or file is. To import special now, which is inside components now, and this home.js inside pages and special inside components. I have to first of all, this first dot means to go back. So when I go back now, I'm now going to be inside. Once I go back, I'm now going to be inside component directory, right? Then I go back twice, basically. Once I go back twice, I'm not going to be inside source directory. Let me come again now. I'm trying to import special, which is inside component directory, and this file I'm currently on is on my pages. So the first thing I'll do is now is to bring us to the source directory of pages, source directory itself. Then when I put my slash now and component, I enter this particular folder and I select what special. But with images, once you add your image to your public folder, all you have to do is just, if I go to my hero.js, you just do slash images slash the name of the picture. That's the name of the picture basically. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it basically is to import the image, right? So let me try importing. So basically, this is the second method, importing it. Yeah, right here. Why I'm not actually seeing the images, for some reason, I'm getting an error when I click on these images. As you can see the error right here. And for me to fix this error, I'll have to run npm install. So it's reinstall the dependencies, and the error is back, basically. The error is gone, I mean, sorry. But this is actually the second way, actually the second way of what adding your images. So I'll take that out. Oh, okay. Let me try something. Mhm. All right. This is actually how it's done. Skip my mind. So the second way now to get image into your file basically is to import. Now what I did here basically, right? It's just like when I'm declaring a constant and I'm saying const name should be equals to Femi. This is a I'm declaring this variable to be equal to this value. It's the same thing I do when I'm importing an image. An image does not have a name. For example, now once I create my home.js, right, I'm exporting home. So definitely, if I'm importing, I'll just do import home from, because that page I'm importing, I've already given it a name. But when I'm trying to import an image, we cannot just import the image like this. Basically, this is how we import a CSS file, not an image. So to import an image, you must give it a name. I can change this name now to, let me change this name now to UNN. I just have to come here and rename it UNN. Still going to give me the same, still going to give me the same error. Let me just refresh. Sorry, still going to give me the same result, which is the image. So this is our second way, basically, of adding our image to our file. But this second method now is very stressful because you now have to start importing every single image you want to use on your page. So some people it works quite alright. Some people it does not. Lastly, basically, the last method is to create an asset folder. Now, some people don't like putting their images or their fonts in a public folder because, like I said, the public folder, like I said last week, the public folder is the folder that the public most likely will have access to, probably when they are reading through the site or they are checking the source control of the site and all of those stuff. When you are hosting it on your site, on your web hosting server, and all of those stuff, the public folder will always be visible. So if you don't want to use your public folder, you can come to your source folder, and your source folder create a folder called assets. Now in this assets, you can put your images, your fonts, and all of that basically. But the thing about assets now is that you also need to what import it. You also need to what import it. Why I'm not importing anything for my public HTML, because once I put this slash, basically it takes me to my public folder. That's what that slash means. Just takes me direct to my public folder, and I just what route it to a particular image I want. That's basically how it works. So that's how you would add an image to your React file basically. Um so the next thing I want to look into now is state. I don't know how many of us have heard about state in React. So like I said in the last two class, we have different hooks in React that helps us to perform different function, right? Like we have different hook. Helps us perform different function. If when you load a page, you want so thing to happen, you can use a certain hook in React to do that. If you want by the click of a button, you want this to happen, you can use certain hook in React to do that, basically. Now, in normal JavaScript, I hope you're still with us. All right. So in normal JavaScript, you create a function, and when you create a function, you can use add event listener to target that function to a particular ID, or you simply take out the name of that function, go to your HTML code, and put on click, and put that function there, so it will run whenever that file is clicked. That's basically how it works, right? So now let's create an instance whereby I'm going to create an instance. I'm going to call it. Let me create a variable. Now I'm going to call it const. Um, let's say count, and I say count is equals to 1, right? Now let's create a function that would increment count whenever a button is clicked. So when we do function count function, let's call the name of the function increase count, right? So once I do this, I'll just do count plus 1. I'm sorry, I have to add the return statement. Return count plus 1. So now I created a variable called count, and I created a function called increase count, that anytime this function is triggered, it should add plus 1 to count. Right now, I'm going to create a button right below here. Now this button, I'm going to call it increase, and on this button I'm going to do on click, then I'll add my function increase count. So what does this mean? It means that anytime I click on increase, this number here, which is count, should increase to 1. Right? Now let's see what happens. Where is our number? Okay. Let me put our number. Let me give it a p tag. Let's call. Now what did I do? I put this count that I declared into my what? To my GSX, which is what equals to 1. So anytime I click increase, the 1 should increase, right? You can see I'm clicking increase, but nothing is happening. Why is nothing happening? Because this event right here is not being controlled by state. This count right here is not being controlled by state. That is how React control changes through state. What do I mean? React sees a certain variable. Now, like this count now, for example, React sees it at a certain, like it's at a certain state. Okay, this is the state of this count now. The state of this count now is 1. That's how React sees it. So for you to change it, you have to actually change the state of that particular count, not actually the value. Basically, sorry for that. So how do I use state hook now in React so that I can keep changing my value? Because the truth is that you cannot perform any function in React if you are not changing the state. Because I'm putting count as 1, React has taken this count as 1. This is the state. So there is nothing before my GSX indicating that this state should change. So it remains 1. So how do I do that? The first thing I do is what? Import use state. Now this is the first thing I do. Import use state, right? So I've imported it. It's showing a yellow line below because I've not given it what? A value, or I've not used it. I just imported it and I've not used it. So now let's make use of state. I'm going to create now. I'm going to create a state now. What I'm going to do now is do const. This is the kind of bracket I'm opening. I don't forget what they call this bracket, but this kind of bracket I'm opening. Then what I'm going to do now is write count, comma. Let me comment this count out. Count, comma. The second thing I'll now do is set count. Then equal to use state. I'll open my bracket. Now whatever I put inside this bracket will become the value of this count. And wherever I use the set count become the new value of what this count. So this count now, if I put 1 here, it means that 1. If I put 2 here, it changes. If I put 3, that was an error. If I put 3, it changes. So whatever you put inside this bracket when you call use state is directly assigned to this your first argument or your first variable passed inside your const, right? So how do I now change the state of this count? I'll create a function called increase count. But instead of doing return count plus 1, what I'm not going to do is say set count. This set count now becomes the new state of this what old count. Let me come again. This might sound pretty confusing. When we're trying to use state in React, this is how it is written. First of all, set the initial state. And after we set the initial state, we set a variable for the next state. In such a way that once this state changes, it's as a result of what this state. What do I mean again? Count. Set count. Meaning that any function I give to set count, whenever I trigger that function, count will change because I'm setting count to a new variable. So once I create this function, increase count, what I'm not going to do is what call this set count, and I will open the bracket. Now once I open this bracket, let me give count a new number called 10. Let's do that. Now let's see what happens when I click on this button, right? Increase, it changes to 10. Why? Because I have set the new state of this count to be what? To be 10. Now once I refresh, it goes back to 3 because 3 is what the initial state. But once this function is triggered, set count changes the state of this previous count. That's basically how it happens. So let's say I'm changing this to 5, and I want to, whenever I click this button, I want count to change to 1. Once I click increase, it changes to 1. So that's how you change the value in React. That's how you trigger a function, by putting it through states, changing the state. Okay, I'm trying to do addition. All right, I have to create a state first that okay, the initial number of this is 1. And whenever I click this addition function, it should change the state of this initial value to this new value every time that function is clicked, every time that function is triggered. That's basically how state works. So now let's try our addition now. This set count now, I want a situation whereby anytime this function is clicked, it is going to be setting count to a new value, whereby the value is +1 of the initial value. So now I can do this in 2 ways, right? I can decide to pass an arrow function, which is a longer method, or I can just go straight to the point. Now let me go straight to the point first. All I have to do is just do count, which is what my initial state, which is equals to 5. Let's look at it now. 5 is our what? Initial state. Let me refresh. 5 is our initial state, meaning that whenever I click on increase, it's still going to remain 5, right? But once I do this count and I add +1, it means that anytime I click increase, that 5 should increase. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It keeps going, keeps going. Why? Because every time the button is clicked, it is setting count to a new value. Meaning that how does it work now? Let me just explain the secret now. This 5 now, the initial state which is called count. Once I click on increase, it changes to 6. That 6 now becomes the new state of count. So instead of count being 5 now, because of that function that we clicked once, it changes this count to 6. So that when I now click it again, it adds 1 to that 6 and changes to 7. Then that count again becomes 7. That's how it keeps going. So it keeps changing the state of this particular one. That's why I said, that's why in React they write it as count, then set count, meaning that whenever set count is used, this initial value of count changes. Now I'm seeing 5 as my initial value, but whenever I increment, my initial value becomes 6. That's how it works. If I keep increasing, the same thing. The same thing can work with us reducing. Okay, let me create, let me leave this as plus. Let's create a button for decrease. Let's quickly do that. So let's create a function. Just going to copy and paste this, and I'm going to call this decrease count. And I want every time it's clicked, it should subtract 1 from count. Let me duplicate the button. And what I'll just change this to what? Decrease count. Change this to what? Decrease. So it means that every time I decrease this, anytime I click on this, it decreases. It decreases, it decreases, it decreases, it decreases. That's just about it. Now, I want a situation whereby I'm increasing now. Okay, let me just refresh. I want a situation whereby once I decrease this and it gets to 0, I don't want it to decrease anymore. Now, how do I do that basically? I can use my ternary operators for like number 1. Now let's do that. Now I'm calling count now in my p tag. This count here is this number. Let's refresh. Count that I gave 5, right? Is this particular number here, which is currently enclosed in a p tag. I want a situation whereby if count is equal to 0, let it no longer reduce. So let's use our ternary operators. Now instead of me putting count here direct, the first thing I'm going to do is what? Check if count is what? Equal to what? 0. And I'll put my question mark. What does this do? It's going to throw me an error, definitely. It's an incomplete function. But now look at this. Count equal to 0. Question mark. It's asking. Is count equals to 0? Like directly equals to 0. That's the question. This is asking. Then the next thing that comes after my question mark is what's my return if it is equals to 0. So my return, I want to call my return count. Sorry, call my return count. Else, which is this double colon. Else, let's see if it was 0. All right, now this is it. Count is initially what equals to what 5, right? And if I put my ternary operators, asking the question, if count is equal to 0, if it is true, let me have what count. Else, let me have what 0. But then this is supposed to be showing 5, not 0. That was basically on purpose because this ternary operator now, how would I put this? Even that sometimes it confuses me in a way. Based on how this statement is read, right? It means that if count, which is now equals to 5, is equal to 0, and that is true, let me be saying count. Let me change the instance of this now. Let's say if count is equal to 5, which is the initial value, which is the initial value. I want to see a statement saying count is correct. Else, I want to see count is wrong. When I refresh, I'm seeing count is correct, meaning that this statement is true. Now let's reverse back. Now this was my initial question. If count is equals to 0, like if this is true, let it show this. Else, let it show this. So is this equal to true? You can see count is 5. This is not true. So I'm getting what? 0. That's basically it. I'm getting 0. So that's how ternary operators work. So you can use this to change between your values and this and that and this and that and the rest of all of that. Right? Now, I want to create a I want to create a situation whereby once this count gets to 0, I don't want it to minus further. Now let's try to do that. Basically, that will now bring us to using if statement, and I'm going to use if statement outside my what JSX, not inside. Let me see if you guys have to find me. Okay. So now inside this my function, I'm going to put if count is greater than 0. So it's greater than 0. Set count to be subtracting 1 every time it is clicked. Else, if count is equal to 0, let me set count to 0. I'll just call this count like I did before. So now I have count, which is my initial value, as 5, as we're seeing here. I have two functions. One is to increase it, and the other is to decrease it. But why decreasing it? I want a situation whereby once it gets to 0, it should just set the count to 0. So let's see how that works. I decrease, it changes, I decrease, it changes, I decrease, it changes, I decrease, it changes, I decrease, it changes. But I can see when I get to 0, I'm clicking on decrease, it's no longer working. So this is a situation whereby your if statement comes in React. But I cannot use this if statement in my JSX. You can't use if statement. What we use in JSX is what ternary or what operators. That's how it works. So that's basically how we use state. We can use state for so many things, right? You can use state for so many things. Now, let me give this div now a background color. So I'm going to put my inline styling. I'll put on that color. I'll open it and I'll say background color. Background color. So I want to give it the background color of red. Now I shall have a background color of red, right? But now I want to change my background color to blue. If okay, let's create a state now. I want to create a state const. I'll say gender. No, I'll say male. Input male. Then comma set male. I'll put equals to. I'll put use state. Now I want to give this a value of what's true or false. So I'll give it true. Meaning that okay, yes, I'm a male. But if it's false, that means I'm not a male, I'm a female, or whatever you are, basically. So now I want the situation whereby if I am male, let the background be blue. Let me change this to blue for now. If I'm male, let the background be blue. And if I'm not a male, let the background be pink. How do I use that now inside my JSX? How do I use that here? I have to what make use of what ternary operators. So now writing blue direct, instead of me writing blue direct, I'll just basically say male. What? I'm asking the question: is male true? If male is true, let me get blue. Else, let me get what? Pink. Now I'm having blue because what male is true. But if I change this to false, I should be having pink. I'm having pink. That's basically it. So now I want to create a button now that can change the gender for me. And as I'm clicking on it, it's going to keep on changing the gender back and forth, male and female, male and female. So let's create a button now. I'll create a button now. I'll call the button change gender. Okay, let me create a function. So I don't get error. Create a function now. Function is what? Change gender. So in this function now, I want to change the state of male from true to false anytime it is clicked. I can like again I can use two ways basically. I forgot to show you put the other way. Okay, let's use the other way now. I'm just going to do set male. I open a bracket, right? I'll pass previous what? Previous. Let me just say previous. Previous means this initial value here. Then what did you change to? Then this previous is going to be passed as an argument if I was using my arrow function. Are you serious? All right. So basically, like I was saying, there are two methods now. Initially, I showed you that this is like the most direct method to just set it to a new value directly. But now I'm using a different method. I'm declaring a what an argument, and I'm returning that argument to be equal to this. And this is saying that this my set male is going to be equal to false. And already we have created a condition saying that I've created a condition saying that if male is true, let it be blue. Else, if it is false, let it be pink, right? I'm now going to add this change gender function to this place. Change gender, right? So once I click on this, it's changing it. As you can see, it's changing it. That's basically how it's. I can do this, or I can come back here. Instead of using this method, I can just use let me comment this out. And I'll just use this method saying set mail to a what equal to what. Now what does it mean? It means the inverse of what whatever was initially declared to mail. So if mail is true, change to false. If mail is false, change to true. Let's see that. And it does the same thing. So these are basically the two ways. Either you go direct by just declaring what you want the new state to be inside here, or passing what an arrow function and passing arguments through it. So either of these two methods will work. But for now, let's use this what second method. So that's basically what how use state works. So the last thing now I'm going to talk about is what use effect. Now, what is use effect and what does it do? Just like how state is used to change the state of a particular variable, use effect is used to change, not really change, but it plays an effect of when do you want this function to be called. Do you want the function to be called after every 5 seconds? Do you want it to be called when you reload the page? Do you want it to be called when they click on a button? Like, when exactly do you want this function to be called? Like, do you want this thing to happen when this value changes? Do you want this to happen when something happens to this? That's basically what how use effect is like. It helps you to determine when you want an effect to be displayed, basically. So I'm just going to give just one simple direct example to how use effect works. So now to use effect, basically, let me just come below now. To use effect, first thing I use was write use effect. Now there are some functions that, okay, when I put use effects, before I go to what I was about to say now, what I'll do is open what a bracket. Then inside this bracket, I'll create an arrow function. I'll create an arrow function. So this is basically how you write up what use effect. Now, if I leave this thing like this, it just simply says means that any function inside here will be happening every second. Every second. That's what it means. If I leave it like this, every second you want it to be happening. Like every second. Now, for example, I want to set an event like a timeout. I want to set an event like a timeout, basically. And I want a situation whereby counts should increase every 1 second. So now let's do this. Set timeout. That is timeout. I'll do set count. Opening, I'll put count plus 1. Then I'll come, since it's a timeout function, I'll put 1000 here. So I want this to be happening every second, right? Let's refresh this. So as we can see, 6, 7, 8 is changing. Why is it changing? Because of this what use effect. Meaning that anytime I reload my page, it will change. But now let me show you something that's happening on the console. Let's inspect this page. Let's look at the console. Okay, I did not console log out count. Let's console log out count. Count. Now, see how this stuff is happening basically. It's because of there's no dependency array in use effect. I don't know if you guys are seeing my point exactly. What I'm just trying to say, in essence, is that you can control what happens in this use effect when a value changes. Like you can literally control it when the value changes. So if for example now I'm creating a form and I want only state to show, only state to show if country is chosen, I have to use effect, and I have to add what, a dependency array. I'll put a comma and add a dependency array. What this dependency array does is for you to add a condition or add a variable that you want to use to control that effect that you are trying to play in between. I'm trying to play an effect of timeout, but I want to control this timeout. If I want to control this timeout, basically, I can put any variable within this timeout inside here to control it. Now, if I put count now, for example, let me show you something. If I put count now, for example, let's refresh. So this counts now. It definitely means that I'm targeting, like, this use effect function is only going to happen if my count is present. Like that's the only time it will happen if my count is present. So whatever you pass inside this dependency array, we call it dependency array, is what you want to use to control the effects you're trying to play in between here. Now, if I leave this empty, if I leave this empty, it simply means that I want this function to be called anytime my page refreshes. Like once they visit my page newly, start counting. Once they visit my page newly, start counting. So that's what this empty array means. It does every time your page refreshes. So that's how you control that's how use effect works. When you're trying to submit a form data, you have to go through, when you're trying to control a form condition, you have to go through use effects. Like, how would I put it now? Okay, form control. But okay, look at this scenario. You are typing a password, for example, or you're filling a form. And okay, you're filling a form, and in this form, you're filling a password. And I want to throw an error to you if your password does not have special characters. Like, I want to throw an error to you. But I want that error to come as I am typing in that input box. I don't want the situation where it is now when I want to come submit my form and I click on submit and I'll be saying, oh, no special characters. I want, as I am typing in that password and I don't have special characters, let's tell me that there's no special character. Definitely. That's where you use effect. So I'm going to now set a function. I'll probably carry out an if statement. If password does this does not match this, let it throw this error. And in this dependency array, I'll just pass that particular input. Just pass that particular input or the state. Because even for me to type in input form, I have to use state. So I'll just pass that particular state in the dependency array. So whenever that state changes, whenever it changes, to be checking any function inside the use effect, to be checking it to make sure that everything goes well, basically. So lastly, I'm just going to I'm going to talk to you about forms. About forms. So now, how how do we write forms in React? So now I want to create a form, right? First thing I'll do is let me add a break tag. So I've added three break tag. I want to create a form. Now, first of all, I'll open my form tag. So once I open my form tag, let me just create two forms, first name and last name. So I'll do my label. Now you can do your label two ways basically. Let's say this label now is first name. In React, you can write your label and your input in two ways. This is the first way. I put my label first name and I put input. I create an input and within this input now, I'm going to pass in my attributes. Type. I'll call my type as text. Um, I'll give it a name because I need a name as first name. Then value. Put an empty colon for now. On change, meaning anytime I want to change the value of this input. Now, how do I tag this label to this input? I can do it two ways. First way is to put HTML4 and I'll target the name, which is what first name. And the second way is this way, which I'll do right now. Um, Let me keep this in a div basically. Let me keep it in a div. So I'll just differentiate the two. Let's keep this in a div. Now create the second div and I'll do a label. And instead of me doing this HTML4, I'll just put my input tag inside. That's my second way. And if I put my input tag inside my label tag, I don't need to write HTML4. So last name, I'll just take out the same values, copy, just put them here. I have to change the name to last name. Now, if I come to this place now and I type, you can see I'm getting an error. Let me refresh now. If I come to the input tag now and I type, it's going to throw me an error. Why? Because that input is not being controlled by state. Nothing changes in React without state controlling it. Can't change anything in React without state controlling it. It must be controlled by state. It has to be controlled by state. So how do I control a form with state? The first thing I'm going to do now in my form tag, let me close this so you can see it very well. First thing I'm going to do now in my form tag is before my return statement. Like always, that's where we put our JavaScript code. First thing I want to do is what I want to create a state for the form data. So I'll do const form data, comma set form data equals to what use state. Now this is the first and easier method. And what do I do now? I create an object. And inside this object, I do first name, and I do last name. I can do this, or this is the second method. Let me call this form data one, so I don't get an error. Form data one, and I call this form data two, so it doesn't give me an error. Now this is the first method. This method. This is the second method. Instead of me to create an object and add everything I want to be that I want to create in a form inside that object, I can do for const first name and I'll do it again for what last name. Come here, change it to last name. So inside here, I'll just give it an empty string. Yeah, I'll give it an empty string. So now this is like doing each of the inputs separately. I like this one is like just doing everything together by putting them in an object. Either way, I target them the same way, right? If you have an object now in normal JavaScript, if you have an object called, let's say, const data. If you have a normal object like this in JavaScript and I put name and I put age, if I want to get the name, I'll just do let me use console.log now for example. Let's say name is Bola, age is 23. If I want to get the name, I'll just do console log what data dot name. Let's check our console. So in our console now we're saying Bola. That's how we target what a key in objects in normal JavaScript, right? So now if I want to target this first name, I'll just do form data dot first name. Remember, whatever is inside here, whatever is inside this bracket, this usage bracket, is assigned to what the first value written. So I want the value now to be, I want the value of my first name to be what form data dot first name. I want the value of my last name to be form data one. That's a mistake. Form data one dot last name. Form data one dot last name. But then when I still come back, clear out my console and I click here, it should still give me an error. Why? Because I've not added an unchanged function. This unchanged here, I need to add it, meaning that whenever I change anything inside here, it should respond. So now how do I add an unchanged value? Now we are going to be working with this second method because it's easier to put all your form information into one object. So now I'll just take this out. So what I'm going to do now is create an unchanged function. Yeah. So I'll do function handle what change and all I have to do is just do set from data one, open my bracket. Now all I have to do is just what go straight to the point. So instead of how do I now change, how do I now create a function whereby whenever this is clicked, let it change the information. All I have to do first of all is open a curly brace because I'm trying to set a new value for form data, and form data was already what an object. So the first thing I'll do is dot 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 form data one. Now this dot 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 form data one is called object spread or array spread. What this statement means now is that the first thing this set form data does is what is give this form data the value of like its initial value. Like it's like as if I'm copying these two things now and I'm putting it back inside here. That's what this dot 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 form data means. It means give me all the objects inside form data back. So this dot 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 form data here, basically, is like as if I'm taking what is here and putting it back here. So after I've done that, I put a comma. This form took me a while to learn, basically, when I was learning it. So it's understandable if you're not following, but just listen. You might hear one or two things that might click your head later on. So after I put a comma, I'm going to now pass an event. This now is an event argument. And what I will now do is open this my boxy braces, and I'll now do dot target dot name. That's why I give it a name. That's why I give it a name. Dot target dot name. Go to what dot target dot value. What does it mean? This function will check whether the name is what is correct. The name of that particular form data is correct. And if that name, when I mean correct, like if it's aligning, like it targets the name, like this name that is here now. That's what that id or target. It targets this name. Then when it targets this name, whatever value that I put will come into that particular input tag that has this name. Let me come again. This id or target or name means that this particular id or target or name is trying to say that it's going to target the particular input tag that needs to be changed and change it. So if the name I have is not correct, now this first name and this last name here, why did I write first name and last name? Because that's the name I gave it initially. Last name and first name. Very important attributes in React, that name, which is all this first name and last name. So whenever I target this id or target or name, it's targeting this first name and this last name. And whatever value that is being imputed inside is being directed or tied down to this particular target. That again would not make so much sense. But let me just show you how it is now. I'll take this function and I'll put it here. Let's see, I'll do what? Change. So now when I try to edit, I'm not getting an error. I can say Bola. I come here, I say Tunde. Okay, now this I'm getting an error here. That means it's not targeting well. Why? Because last name here has two T, but the name I put here has one T. So it's only targeting, it's looking for an input value that has that same name here and it's changing that particular value for it. So all I have to do is what? Is come to my name here and correct this to one T. Then I can now what? Edit it basically. So that's how we handle what forms in React basically. So yeah, so far so good. We have been able to cover um states, applying images, ternary operators, if statements, this effects, and form control basically. So combining this with what was mentioned in the last class, these are the most basic things you're going to most likely come across in React. We're not going to the bootcamp is not to teach you basically everything, but it's to just lay a foundation and an understanding to what the syntax of a programming language looks like. So I believe I've done justice to the basics of React at some point. To an extent, I believe I've done basics. So if you have any questions at all, you can throw me the questions. Any question at all? I'll be giving 5 minutes for questions. Okay. John Bees.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Please, and throughout this our boot camp, like this stuff they used to call bootstrap. Bootstrap. Do you know what's bootstrap?
Yes, I do was Bushra.
Like, aren't you going to use it? Is it not necessary?
Bootstrap is a CSS framework. It's not necessary.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
But I swear I
Um,
know, but I swear I don't understand though. Everything they talk today, I swear, I just feel I understood.
don't worry. Probably if you rewatch the recording or you do more research, go on to more tutorials, you definitely understand. React is not easy to understand though. It's not easy at all. Took me time, to be very honest. And you have to understand JavaScript to an extent. Like I mean to an extent. I mean to an extent. That's why all this stuff is looking like. What's going on? Aja Anthony, what's your question?
Yeah, good evening.
Agree
Hello?
with.
Thank you. Talking about image, I thought image will be source before auth. I saw
Oh,
in this
oh, oh.
class that,
Now, there's
yeah,
what we call tags, and there's what we call attributes, right? Attributes now are those that are found inside a tag, right? Now, this is a div. This style inside this div is an attribute. This is an image. This alt is an attribute. This source is an attribute. They do not have a unique arrangement at all. Like I can do so many, just like this input now. I can still decide to come down here and add the class name and call it first name. It does not mean my class name has to come first. I can still carry this type that normally would come first in HTML and put it as what last. So the arrangement does not matter. They are attributes. They are not like unique or they are not strict. So I hope that answers your question, Anthony.
yeah. But I have another question. Must we import everything to another place, or
You
is
asked
it
me,
those ones you don't want people to see?
you asked me that same question last week. Now basically, yeah, I gave you two ways of adding an image to your file. The first way is to create an image folder inside your public.html. With this, you don't need to import the image. But if you don't go with this method, you just want to put the image inside your source directory or inside your asset folder, you have to now import it. That's basically how it works. So yeah, Tochiko, what's your question? Tochiko, you raised your hand. What's your question?
Sorry, concerning this
I can't hear
camera,
you, boss. I can't hear you.
can you hear me?
I
Can
can't
you
hear
hear
you.
me? No, 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 no. You can hear me, right? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. I said it's concerning this camera. There's one camera something at the edge, camera video. Like, how did you do it? And that setting sign.
Sorry, come again.
Hello? Is it?
Come again. Come again.
I said this camera, the side of your work. I don't know if you're seeing it. Camera,
Oh,
video, and
it's
settings.
an okay. It's an app for screen recording and
Oh, oh, oh. Okay, I
yeah,
thought.
yeah.
Okay, I thought that it was part of the stuff that was done.
Okay, no, no, no.
Okay, all right, no problem. Okay, thank you.
Aja, what was your question? Aja, what's your question? Okay, Oluchiku, what's your question?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Not quite well.
Can you hear me now?
All right, I can hear you now.
Okay. Please, I don't know if you can give a kind of recap of the whole process again.
You don't know if
Please,
I can what?
as in give a whole recap of the process again. The whole thing is confusing. It's very confusing
A
to me.
whole recap of.
React we've been treating. I mean the processes again, creating
Uh,
folder
I
component.
I won't be able to do that because of time. I have a meeting in 8 minutes basically. But what I'll do is that the recording will be made available. Now the thing is that some people used to message me in my DM, and I'm not good with DMs to be very honest. Once I see your message on the group, I'll definitely what give you much more attention. So what you just do for me is try to watch the video first. Just give it a chance. Then after that, whatever you don't get, just tag me in the group. Why I'm saying you should tag me in the group is I'll see it faster and other people can offer you answers to those questions. Other people that have understood that aspect, basically. Just grow with the community. Alright, assuming that I still had more time, then definitely. That's nothing. Oluchukwu, yeah?
Yeah, yeah, I get. Thank you.
Alright. So I guess that will be all for today, yeah? Anthony, what's your question?
Yeah, so we did not see the this thing, the the previous class, the recording. We have not seen it posted in the group.
Wow. Okay, I'll send that tonight. I'll send that tonight.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Oluchukwu, yeah?
Yeah, I get, sir.
Okay, okay. All right, now that brings a conclusion. Basically, we'll be having a meeting with everybody on Sunday to discuss full details about the project so that you can be eligible for the certificates. Trust me, certificate is a very big boost to your resume. You want to work anywhere, once they see that okay, you actually have attended some kind of education, it's time gives you more chance, basically. So if you qualify to be part of the project, do it well, basically. Like do it very, 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 very well. You might even land a job afterwards from the kind of stuff you do with your project. Nobody knows, but just do it very well. So on Sunday, basically, we're going to give you guys a briefing on how everything should work, dates of submission, deadline, and every single thing that you need to know, basically. So thank you all for coming up for today's class. It's not easy to be consistent. I appreciate the zeal. Just keep it going, keep the fire burning. See you guys later.